So welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to lecture number 7 from Miscellaneous in this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay 2026. In this lecture series, we cover all current affairs relevant for your prelims examination, but we don't just restrict ourselves to current affairs, we also cover the associated static topics as well. So through this lecture series, you will get to revise all your current affairs subject-wise as well as the associated static topics, because we all know that static topics that have some connection with current affairs have a higher chance of featuring in your prelims examination. Therefore, we would revise everything. You don't have to worry about your revision if you are following this lecture series consistently and regularly. Now, to properly follow this lecture series, you have to follow these 4 steps. Watch the lecture on time at 9 p.m. every day. This is step number 1. Then, whatever is discussed in the lecture, plus some extra information is given in your notes. Do memorize the lecture from the notes. Then we have enrolled you in WhatsApp groups for all your doubts. Well, step number 3 is ask your doubts as soon as they occur to you. And step number 4, which is the most crucial. Well, along with this lecture series, we are also giving you an access to our test series as well. This test series contains an exhaustive list of tests through which you will get to practice ample MCQs. Be regular with those tests. Now, as far as the lectures are concerned, well, they would be coming on YouTube every day at 9 p.m. So you don't have to worry about that. But for notes, for WhatsApp groups, and for the tests, you would have to register on our app or on our website. The links to registration are given in the comment section below. You can register either on the app or on the website. Both the links are given in the comment section below. So join now, register now, because this lecture series would be really beneficial for you. Okay? All right. So this is all you need to know as far as the introduction part of this lecture series is concerned. Now let's straight away jump into the lecture. And our today's topic of discussion is Girmitia community. Now, what is this Girmitia community? You know, there are many Indians living in far off places of the world, and they have been living for 5-6 generations. Okay, they have lost all contact with India, yet they are of Indian origin. They have become prime ministers, successful cricketers. Countries like Trinidad and Tobago, Fiji, Seychelles, Mauritius have people of Indian origin, but they have been living there for 5, 6, 7 generations even. Now, how did this community come about? This community's name is Girmitia community. So we will talk about the term Girmitia. How did this term originate? And how did this community settle in far-off places of the world? British colonial interests are at play over here. So we will understand everything. The reason why we are focusing on Girmitia community is because, well, recently Prime Minister Modi, while his visit to Trinidad and Tobago, made certain announcements. So we will talk about those announcements, and we will also talk about this Girmitia community. Okay, chances are that a question might be asked in your prelims examination with respect to this topic. Therefore, we will comprehensively cover this topic and all the associated current affairs related to that. Clear? So let's straight away jump into the lecture. Let's begin. So miscellaneous, lecture number 7, Girmitia community. Now take a look at this collage. Okay, this person, Anirudh Jagannath, well, you must not have heard about his name, but the name appears a little Indian, right? He was the former Prime Minister of Mauritius. Naveen Ramgoolam, again an Indian name, he is the Prime Minister of Mauritius right now. Mahendra Chaudhary was once a Prime Minister of Fiji. Okay, Kamla Prasad Bisesar, well, she was once and she was the first female Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Well, these high-achieving Indian people whose name appears Indian and they are of Indian origin, well, they have been living here in these territories for 5-6 generations, and there are some other examples also. For example, if you have followed cricket, well, there are these famous West Indian cricketers like Ram Naresh Sarwan, Shiv Narayan Chandrapal. They all belong to this Girmitia community. Okay, so what is this Girmitia community? Let's talk about this. First of all, why this was in the news. So on his Trinidad Tobago visit, the Prime Minister of India said, India is working to create a Girmitia community database, okay, and to regularly host World Girmitia Conference. Plus, he also announced that OCI cards, Overseas Citizen of India cards, would be given to 6th generation Indian diaspora in Trinidad and Tobago. So people who came to Trinidad and Tobago from India 6 generations ago, well, they will also be facilitated with OCI card for India. This was the announcement made by Prime Minister Modi when he visited Trinidad and Tobago. Now, Girmetia community refers to the descendants of Indian indentured laborers. So basically, the Britishers, when they colonized India, they had colonies all over the world. Okay. Now, in 1832, they abolished slavery. But in these colonies like Fiji, Mauritius, West Indies, in all these colonies, they were short of workers. So what they did was they hired workers on contract basis from India and transported them to these colonies. Okay, transported by British to colonies after slavery abolition in 1833, 1832-33. Okay, so slavery was abolished, but they required laborers, so they contracted on contract basis. They took workers from India to these colonies. Once these people were transported to work on plantation agricultural fields in these colonies, once they were settled there for some time, these people decided to stay back and they have basically populated these countries. Okay, these people are called Girmitias. Over 1.2 million Indians, mainly from UP, Bihar, and South India, signed Girmit contracts for plantation work from 1834 to 1920. So these contract workers signed contracts with British agents between 1834 to 1920, and then they were taken to these plantation agricultural fields all over the world. Okay, currently there are 1.2 million Girmitias. Now, why are they called Girmitias? Okay, well, the thing is that slavery was abolished. Yes, now slave labor was not allowed, but workers were required in these plantation fields. So, what would these British agents do? These British agents would sign contracts or agreements with workers from UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu. They would sign agreements. Now, people in these areas, laborers in these areas would sign these agreements and go to these colonies. Now, people of these areas could not pronounce agreements. They pronounced it as agreement or girmit. So girmit is basically a mispronunciation in local Indian languages of the word agreement. So they would say that I've signed a girmit and I'm going to Mauritius. That would be the case. And that is why these people were called girmitiyas, people who have signed girmits or agreements. Now you understand, girmit is basically a mispronunciation of the word agreement. Okay. Now about girmitiyas. So Indian Immigration Act refers to the colonial era system of indentured labor, formalized under various laws like the Indian Immigration Act of 1833. So once Slavery Abolition Act was passed in Britain, Indian Immigration Act was passed, which allowed British agents to sign agreements, contracts with these workers and take them to far off places. That sent millions of Indians to work in plantations in British colonies. The name Girmit comes from Indian pronunciation of agreement, leading to the migrants being called Girmitiyas. Now, the agreement was generally a 5-year contract, promising passage, okay, transportation cost was covered, wages, and return. Return was also promised. That's why many workers from India would agree to go to these plantation areas. They were promised that after 5 years you will come back. But once they reached over there, they were exploited like a slave. And it was made really difficult for them to return back. That is why they had to stay over there. Okay. And return, but often misleadingly presented with harsh realities. It was not technically slave labor, but it was very close to slave labor. There were such exploitative conditions that people have written books and published journals about it. Very exploitative conditions. Now, recruitment handled by recruiters who lured workers mainly from Bihar, UP, Tamil Nadu with promises. Now, such was the literature on the exploitation of these workers in these areas, okay, that Indian nationalists put pressure through protests and all, put pressure on British government to stop these Girmitiyas or Girmitiya transport. And that is why under pressure from Indian nationalists, well, the British abolished the system in 1920. And Indian Immigration Act 1922 was passed, in which various protection measures were passed so that these workers won't be exploited. But until 1920 or 1922, many Girmitiyas were transported to these areas. Okay, now if you take a look at this map, these are the places where they were transported. Okay, so this is India. So from India, they were taken to Mauritius, Fiji, Seychelles, Guyana in Latin America, Trinidad, Tobago, Suriname, many places, and many island states. Okay, these were the places, major destinations. Mauritius, first arrivals in 1834. Now 70% of the population is Indo-Mauritian. So Mauritius is of Indian origin now because of this Girmitia. Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Suriname, Jamaica has many Indian people of Indian origin. Then Fiji and South Africa. In South Africa, there was this place called Natal, okay, where even Mahatma Gandhi went. So this was there. Then a smaller number of Indians were also taken to Seychelles, Myanmar, Malaysia. Girmitias were sent to sugar, tea, and coffee plantations because these plantations required workers. Okay, so they were sent to sugar, tea, coffee plantations in these countries. That was the thing. Clear? Now there is a table in your notes which I have shared, which contains certain key facts about these Girmitias. Okay, so total number of migrants, total number of Girmitias in the world are around 1.5 million. That means 15 lakh Indians, people of Indian origin, Girmitia origin, are residing in many countries of the world. They might have lost touch with their culture a little bit, but they are of Indian origin and they have kept their culture alive in those countries. We talk about their cultural contribution, okay? Duration, 1834 to 1920, ended due to protests like Gandhi's protest in South Africa, okay? Main source regions. From where were these workers hired in India? Eastern UP, Bihar, Bhojpuri regions, Awadh regions, and South India, Tamils. Tamils were hired and taken to Southeast Asia, Myanmar, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, in these places. Diaspora size today forms majority community in Mauritius, Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, Suriname, significant Indian people in Fiji and South Africa. Tamils from Madras Presidency, Nagapattinam and Thondi went to Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka, Burma and Malaysia. Okay, so Tamils were hired to work in Southeast Asia. People from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar were hired to these far off places like Mauritius, Fiji, Seychelles, Suriname, Trinidad, Tobago, West Indies basically. Okay, so this was the thing. Now, as far as the Girmitias are concerned, some more extra information would be given in your notes, especially about Indian Emigration Act and all these things. So do memorize those facts. But now let's talk about the contributions of these Indians abroad. What contributions have they made to those areas, and what is their significance for India of today? Okay, so these people have enhanced India's soft power. How? Because when they were taken to these far off places, they also took their culture, their language, their festivals, their religions to those places. And these religions, languages, culture, they thrive in those places. Okay, so their cultural contribution. They became the majority group in countries like Mauritius, Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, and Suriname, driving significant cultural assimilation of Indian traditions into local cultures. Okay. The biggest thing is festivals like Diwali, Holi, Ram Leela, Jose are celebrated with big pomp and show in Trinidad, in West Indies. They took languages also. Bhojpuri, Fiji Hindi. So Hindi was taken to Fiji and it morphed, adapted, evolved into a different kind of Hindi called Fiji Hindi. Okay. Awadhi. Awadhi, language spoken in Awadh region of UP, from where there is Lucknow. Okay. Awadhi is spoken in Fiji, Mauritius, Suriname. Music, folk, musical instruments, all were taken to these places and there was a big cultural infusion. The local culture of that place, other migrant cultures and Indian cultures, they mixed and created a fused culture. Okay, and these things of Indian culture, these artifacts of Indian culture are kept alive by these Girmitias. So it considerably enhances India's soft power, right? Then they also play a very pivotal role. There is modern significance also. Because these people are of Indian origin, they are sympathetic to their place of origin. That is why these countries support India a lot on multilateral forums like UN, World Economic Forum, WTO. Then they boost India's soft power via cultural ties. Plus, most of these Girmitias have reached top political positions. We have seen these people, right? They have reached highest political office. So this is one big advantage. Yes, then there are many advantages. Many remittances. These people still send money to their old families. Remittances come through these areas. Well, Mauritius contributes 17% of India's FDI in 2024-25. So there are economic benefits as well. And descendants hold high offices. Now, because they play such a pivotal role for India of today, that is why Government of India has launched various initiatives to promote this community. Okay. Recent developments include PM Modi's push for Girmitia database. So we will create a database of all Girmitias all across the world. These 1.5 million people, to keep track of their place of origin. Okay. Then World Conference on Girmitias, so that these people can come together, sharing one thing, and that is their place of origin. Then OCI card benefits in Trinidad and Tobago. So many initiatives are taken to connect with Indian diaspora all over the world, right? So that would be all. Today's lecture was short and crisp, yet it was important. That is why we have touched upon this. By the way, please do not forget to revise and memorize this lecture from the notes, because your notes would contain some extra information. Some information that was not discussed in the lecture would be present in your notes. So do revise your notes, memorize your notes, ask your doubts in the WhatsApp groups, and be regular with the test, because in 3 days' time there would be another test. Be regular with that. All right. And that would be all from my side, guys. Okay, that would be all. On that note, I'll conclude today's lecture, but I promise to see you again with another topic in this lecture series called Prelims Powerplay. Thank you, everyone.